Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Yehoshaphatekera kogendesegi agatanganya abagotera abari kurunda bakurwa magega obubuwi bokarorekana Yehoshaphatekera kogendesegi agatanganya abagotera abari kurunda bakurwa magega obubuwi bokarorekana Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Mira mwagatera senya chembariri obubuwi bokarorekana omucho yeriko kawa ise ase engencho yogotera Mira mwagatera senya chembariri obubuwi bokarorekana omucho yeriko kawa ise ase engencho yogotera Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Ekero turai keigora setata babuina totero gotera kwa musane manwaye ngondi tokora wano motore Yesu Ekero turai keigora setata babuina totero gotera kwa musane manwaye ngondi tokora wano motore Yesu Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena Amatera neryogo gakineryogo nonya Daudi igare kobugya obukano Saulo erowena nonya totigeneryo mana totige bitina nogochaya nakerebuya mitotwensi katora menye amamuna bana bamo totige namamu totigeneribero totige bitina nogochaya totige bongeki totigeneryo mana totige bitina nogochaya totige namamu totigeneribero totige bitina nogochaya totige bongeki totigeneryo mana totige bitina nogochaya tukorira ere akwirana bigerere tusina banabamo agatotonga tusi ase omubwekano era toigwane tomenye amo kwekari tukorira ere akwirana bigerere tusina banabamo agatotonga tusi ase omubwekano era toigwane tomenye amo kwekari tukorira ere akwirana nakerebuya mitotwensi katora menye amobuna banabamo totige namamu totigeneribero totige bitina nogochaya totige bogeki totigeneryo mana totige bitina nogochaya totige namamu totigeneribero totige bitina nogochaya totige bogeki totigeneryo mana totige bitina nogochaya
onyoyo mino okogoseire tiga komogamba gamba asabantu onyoyo mino okogoseire tiga komogamba gamba asabantu
Uchiere ngora ayo mobo yenga kimwano mitoni kitoko buna Uchiere ngora ayo mobo yenga kimwano mitoni kitoko buna Onyoyo mino okogose tiga komogamba gamba asabantu Onyoyo mino okogose tiga komogamba gamba asabantu Uchiere ngora ayo mobo yenga kimwano mitoni kitoko buna Uchiere ngora ayo mobo yenga kimwano mitoni kitoko buna Nakerebuya mitotwensi katora menye amobuna banabamo totige namamu totige neribero totige bitina nogochaya totige bogeki totige neryo mana totige bitina nogochaya totige namamu totige neribero totige bitina nogochaya totige bogeki totige neryo mana
Hello?
Staki mtu yeyote nyuma. Everyone move. Kuja mjaze hizi forms hapa mbele. Excuse me, kindly come up. Kujeni hapa mjaze hizi form. Kaki nabasoro ire kaki abantu baminto injo mubere asebirugebi. Mama Pastor ninajua kikisi kweli kweli. Inje mwenzi, please welcome. Come up here. Come up here. Then we're going to start right now. You tell me. Okay, welcome. Sit down. Wale waheshimiwa wanakaa mbele wachukue viti vyao. Those supposed to be in front. Doctors, nurses, teachers, please take your place up here. When we are done, when you come, all of you, then we're going to start the program.
Good afternoon. Yes, we have been waiting for this time. It's almost 3:30, and we are going to start. I welcome you all to TME Church. I think most members are here from TME and the visitors. We welcome you all for today's function. First of all, before we start, I will ask one of our elders to pray, then we can start with the program. Elder Kimaiga.
Okay, I think my work is simple to pray. But before I say that, I want to recognize the leadership for Amwagi, whom we've been waiting to make sure that they come to bring the awareness for our community. It is a time that all of us have been waiting for such a long time, and we sincerely thank you so very much for coming, with those who are going to give us more details on how we can cope with our community and what's going along. So right now, if it's okay, if you could all stand up as we seek God in prayer. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, what a wonderful moment that we have come here today to fellowship together and listening to the leaders, more specifically to listen together and talk as a people, as a community, to bring the necessary message pertaining to those that have been affected in many ways. Father God, may you be with us as we begin. The children, the men and the women, the young ones who have come here today, when everything has been presented, may we be the beneficiaries towards the presentation today. We want, Father, to pray for the organization that's Amwagi, and that is come here today to hover this program. May you kindly, Father God, lead them in such a mighty way, because they have already done great to our community, and may you always inspire them even to reach more people out here. If there is anything, Father, that we have not done, we know that you are the Alpha and the Omega, who knows the end from the beginning. May you accomplish every desire for each and everyone who has come here. For we commit this prayer through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. Thank you.
All right, you can sit down now. This Elder Kimaiga is one of our elders. We have Elder Manyanja, I saw him here. Elder Manyanja, where are you? Can you just say hi, just salute? That's Elder Manyanja. Anybody else? No, but the Elder Beatrice, she's always here. She will always be moving up and down. So, first of all, I welcome you all. As I said, we have been waiting for this day for a long time, and it is here today. So if you have any question or any awareness you want to ask, we have all the people who are our running friends are here. They will tell us what we need to know. Another thing I want to ask you kindly, if you have kids and you want to go outside, don't let your kids to go outside by themselves, because the owners are here. Those ones who are on the other side, they are using that side because their time is not over yet. So please accompany your kids to go outside. And when you go through that door, when you go to the left-hand side, we have the bathrooms on that side. And then when you go straight to that, where my hand is pointing outside there's another hallway. There are 2 bathrooms down there. Let's keep this place clean, because this is our place. We rent this place, so we want to keep it clean and feel welcome, and let us enjoy and listen to what we have been waiting for. Now I will ask Elder Beatrice to take over from the program, to start the program and tell us what to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, First Elder Gichana. You are all welcome. He has already welcomed you. He has got his elders here. Me, I'm just a simple old young, a little bit young, old woman, but I'm an elder. I'm in charge of community services. That is why you are seeing me running up and down. Now, I want to hand over this mic to the owners of the program. My work was only to work with my church, to invite them, and I want to thank my elders for accepting me and their Mwagi to come here to conduct this seminar. They are very good people, and they will tell you whom I am in the organization. Thank you very much. I want to hand over to a very wonderful lady here who will do the introduction and take care of everything. Most welcome.
Thank you, Mama Beatrice. Can we clap for Mama Beatrice? Mama Beatrice has worked so hard. Like she said, who is in AMWAG? She's our board of director. She's the one who guides us on what we are going to do. So I want to thank each and everyone who has come here. With me, I have some staff I'm going to introduce, and also I have the AMWAG staff whom I'm going to introduce. So I will start. My name is Elizabeth Marigi. I'm the communication director for African Minnesota Women Awareness Group. We deal with domestic violence. You've seen us outside in the community supplying food, talking about mental health. But also today, we found it good with Mama Beatrice to bring this to you and to come with experts, people who have knowledge, who have experience, who have done all these seminars outside in the community, to come and give us the best that they know. And we are going to make this very, very free, like a discussion, so that everybody will have a chance of answering and asking questions. So with me, I will start with AMWAG Group. Please, can you stand wherever you are so that I can introduce you? So Mora Noel is our community liaison. She's the one who gets the people together, sends out like the flyers you see. Mora works with Susan. Susan is the marketing manager. She's the one who does this work of marketing, letting people know who we are and how we can be part of this. I have Mr. Alex Ongo, who also happened to be my husband. He does for us the financial work. He helps us with whatever small little money we get, he'll help us. And then we have Lillian. Lillian deals with the youth, and she's incorporated in our group so that she can talk to the youth and, bring them together, and so that we can work together as a team. And as we usher in our president, Pes Mairuras is the one who puts us together and guides us on what to do. And then on the high table, we have Dr. Oni. Dr. Oni is a doctor. He has done a lot in the community. If I could read his bio, it's a lot. He's a mental health expert. He has done a lot of lectures in the community. He has helped so many organizations to be where they are. He is our own. When you are proud of having your own, so is our own. And today, he's going to give us a lot of expertise that he has. And please feel free to ask him as many questions as you can. Then I have Dr. Turu. She has a lot of experience. She is a community organizer. She has helped people in restoration of well-being. She has done a lot in the community. She's involved in our church with the youth, with the women. So Dr. Tool, Dr. On, we are glad to have you. Then Neri, Neri is our... Nelly, I think some of you know Nelly. Nelly is our mental health expert. She also belongs, I think, to one of the churches around here. So she belongs here. So she has come to our own church to bring us mental health information. Can we clap for somebody who brings information to our own? So she is actually the one who has connected us with Dr. Tool and Dr. On. So we are so proud, Nelly, for bringing us the two doctors to talk to us today. So then with much ado, President, do you want to say something before we open the floor for something?
No, it's okay.
So then she tells me that, she's okay with that. So I know that you had already had some questions.
Did you introduce this man here?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I know that Beatrice and the team, and also with AMWAG, we came up with so many questions to ask our expert today. I know we talked about peer pressure. Are we together? We said we want to ask questions about culture shock. We want to discuss questions about mental health awareness. We said we want to talk about family and relationship. We said we want to talk about children behavior and all that. We also said maybe they have expertise on drug abuse or something like that. And also we wanted to know, how do we interact, especially interaction between children and the parents and all that? So all those questions you have put down, we have them. But the way we are going to ask them to discuss this forum, I know they are going to give us the best. I'm going to give a mic to each and one of them to talk from their own mouth. And then they will also tell us how are they going to tackle these questions that we have that we want answers. So I can start with Dr. Oni.
What do you want me to say?
No, bring it back. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. You did a very wonderful introduction, and you are doing a great job. We appreciate you so much. And to the president and the CEO of AMWAG, Bessie, we thank you very much for this opportunity. I think a good starting point for us will be to ask the congregation, what are your expectations today? Because we've been talking a lot about mental health. If you ask any kid in the elementary, they know the names. They know a lot. But sometimes it's not only knowing that matters. How do we use the information that we have effectively? How do we use it so that things can get better? We have a theme today. The theme that we have today is mental health and family relationships. what do we really want to achieve with this? What are your expectations? So I think that would be a very good starting point. Am I right, sir?
You are right.
Yes. Am I right, Nelly? Okay. So we are throwing it back to the congregation. Please feel free to talk so that we make it very interactive. Thank you. Brother.
Oh, we need a mic.
Mic, yes.
Let me get another mic.
Thank you.
Maybe you can answer this. Speaker, can we what?
Okay.
So as they said, as Dr. Tulu said, we are going to hear the questions from the congregation. So who has a question for them? Whom can we start with? Any question from the congregation? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the AMA group. We are all here, and I know was advertised as a mental health. We were expecting more of a presentation. And for the few questions that you have mentioned that we needed to look at, as Elizabeth did mention, is you are talking about relationship of children and parents. Bearing in mind, these parents come from Kenya. So in other words, we were looking for an expert in parenting in a Kenyan way, who is supposed to be telling us on how do we relate with the children. And especially, this is a second generation of Kenyans that we are having here. First of all, we have been trained differently, we have been taught differently, and the way we have grown, there is a way, we have a norms. That's the way we talk to our parents and the way our parents related with us. The moment we have tried to relate with us, if most of us, especially, we learned a lot how we are not communicating with our children. So, this is our opportunity for a rebuttal to our children understand our way of parenting. That's one. If the experts can help us, and since we learned from last time what we expected, or the children feel that we don't listen to them, or we know, are you not supposed to be doing something? We can never give them an opportunity to express themselves. That's what we are expecting from you. With culture shock, some of the population of the people I see here, they have been around very well more than 5 years. So probably they have absorbed the shock. So balancing time, I don't know what we need to do about that, because parents are different. If you have an idea on how to help us to balance time, meet the daily demands, and still be available for the children, we expect some information on that. And more especially, looking at the CDC, we are seeing almost over 45% of black and minorities who are also attempting suicide. What is the cause, and how can we help with that? So with the drug abuse, the first signs of drug abuse, that will be our top priority. And how do we navigate through that? Because for example, as the first generation immigrants, some of these issues haven't been, it's not something we are very conversant about. If you can help us understand and be able to figure out what are the earlier signs of drug abuse that we can monitor from the children, and then what is the timely intervention we can take to help most of our children so that they cannot get into a position where they actually need care. And then I think that's what we are expecting for now, and we hope to see that presentation. And for anybody with a question, we will have more questions as they arise. I hope we have a time limit between 2 minutes and so. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for all those questions. So then maybe can we have those questions? I think you are writing down. So maybe we can, I think it started with children and culture shock and relationship. So please can we respond to those summarized questions they have asked?
Thank you so much. So I think we need to start from something that we are so familiar with. We hear it every day. It's a common term. Thank you, sir. We hear it every day. It's a common term, but how is that? Okay, thank you. I think we need to start from culture shock. What do we understand by that? How do we describe it? Culture is something that is good. Why should it become a shock? At what point does it become a shock? What are the, context surrounding culture becoming a shock? First, I want to say, and I say it everywhere we go to, culture can change a lot of things. It all depends on us to use it positively or negatively. But when we keep talking about culture shock, why is that so? The first thing I want to say is about our culture of origin. We are all immigrants. Even if you are born here, the culture at home will be the culture from your country of origin. For example, people think culture is all about the food we eat, the clothes we wear. It's beyond that. It has to do with our language, the way we react, the way we respond to things. It's all around how we are built culturally. So talking about culture shock, Dr. Oni will talk now. One thing we have noticed and research has shown, culture, if not properly managed, it will cause a lot of damage. We need to manage culture so that it will not damage the home. What do I mean? I'm from Nigeria. Dr. Oni is from Nigeria. Bessie is from Kenya. And most people they are from Kenya here. We all have our culture. We are Africans. We migrated to the US. The US has its own culture. When there is a problem marrying the two cultures, that is when there is culture shock. Because you see things that you are not familiar with. You see things that, you think this is an abomination in my culture. And it's acceptable somewhere. To avoid the shock, what do we need to do? We need to have a sound mind, an open mind, a mind that is flexible, a mind that is able to adapt to change in the positive way. Dr. Oni, you want to talk so that we give examples? Because we don't want to talk about practical theory alone. We always give examples for you to understand what we are talking about. So Dr. Oni, and after that, maybe Nelly will want to go.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ola. Culture shock. When we talk about culture itself, culture is not static. Yes. Culture is fluid. Culture, people use culture to do a lot of things. They use culture's name in vain. They say, oh, in my culture. But culture doesn't stand still. Culture moves. Many of you here, you are shocked when you first came to this country because of the winter time. I was shocked when I first came to this country in Wisconsin. I came in January to go to university. And I was wearing t-shirt like my young man there. and the academic international student came to the airport to pick me up. And he was so sorry for me. I carried my luggage, one bag, and I slided down with the bag. I didn't know how to control myself. I was shocked. So that alone is a shock. And that alone can be a life experience for me because of that fun time experience. Now, we talk about culture shock. I just want us to know that sometimes when we define culture, we blame a lot of things on culture. When we cannot do it, we say, oh, it's my culture. When it's okay, it's my culture. But when it's not okay, then it's not my culture. So I want us to know those differences. And how do we get shocking? What is that shocking to us? A lot of things happen to our children. And that is one of the areas that my area of interest. We talk about adult shocking. How about children? We have some experiences of children when I started working back in the 90s, when kids were coming from refugee camp to this country, Minnesota especially. And kids never been in school at the age of 10, and they are now in school. And teachers are asking them to sit down 6 hours a day, when in the refugee camp they run around all day. That's a shocking classroom. Now they come to the classroom and go to the toilet and they see water running freely, and they start studying that water. And they say, wow, why is the kids in the classroom sitting down in the bathroom? They are just watching things. It's a shock. It's a cultural shock to them. Now, the teachers who don't know that, they take it for granted. This is their culture that they see water running every day and light on every day. But when you come here and you see them, it's still happening. Those are cultural shock. When your kids start talking back to you, you say, oh, in Africa, kids don't talk back to us. It's a shocking thing to you too. So there are so many things, if you want to go cultural shock, things that shock you. The chair you sat down on that moves around, those are cultural shock too. So the dresses you wear, now it is the summer. You can wear things like Africa now. Now you are real Africano. So it is very important. Afrocentric parenting is a shocking thing too. Maybe we'll get there later. So I just want to make sure that when we talk about cultural shock, we all experience it, but we express it differently. We experience it, but the way we express it is different. How I experience my own cultural shock is different from your own, but we still have that same cultural shock as the name and denomination for cultural shock. So I will hold off on that again.
Thank you. I think you've alluded to most of really what culture shock is. But as we all have heard, we all experience culture shock in one way or another. Not even just when we moved here. Culture shock is really something that deviates from the norm, what you're usually used to. So even back home, you remember you send your child to boarding school. They get a culture shock when they get to boarding school, adapting to the new life in boarding school. So we are trying here to reference to the culture shock of moving from one country to another. How does that, and in relation to our topic today, which is mental health, how does culture shock really affect our mental well-being? And that's where we need to look at the culture as it's changing from the norm, what we are used to. How are we adapting to it? Are we adapting to it in a positive way that continues to promote our well-being? Or is it affecting us to a way that we are not adaptable so that it affects how we function? So when we talk about culture shock today, we want to be able to allude to culture shock being a way in transition, when people transition from one, even when you go to college and then you start working, you get into a new profession, you adapt to the new lifestyle of your new position now. So we are looking at all the new things that we came to this country that we're getting to see. They will be different from what we are used to, but are we using to the things that we are seeing, we are exposed to inform, but not to change who we are? Because we each identify as who we are, right? Culture is who we are. We don't want you to be lost of your identity just because of moving to this country, but we want to be able to use culture that we are adopting here in a positive way. So, and while we are doing that, we also need to be mindful that our kids that we have brought here, as Dr. Oni mentioned, that our kids are also experiencing their own culture shock. So how are we marrying these two so that as parents, we understand how we are relating to our shock versus how our kids are relating to their shock, so that we are able still to complement one another as we are transitioning to this new culture here where we are here now, but at the same time, we are maintaining our wellness.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those inputs that you have given to us. And I think the other question which was asked was, how do we balance time, and also how do we deal with youth independency? Maybe you can answer on that. How do we balance time? I think that was another question which was asked.
Sorry, before we move to that, we've explained what culture shock is. Do we have questions or do we have any comment? Yeah, we need to hear from the audience before we move to the... Thank you, sir. Please, ask as many questions as you can.
My great concern is this culture shock. When we experience this culture shock, is it because we all of a sudden come into a foreign place, then the conflict starts because we have our own, and then where we go, we find they are doing it, then we get the shock. And secondly, we as Christians or we as immigrants, what are you really doing so as you kind of eliminate the same or stop the same, all come into terms of what we are experiencing? And I hope most of us, we are Christians here. And if you see very clearly, the Somali people are of kind of somehow so intact with their cultures. If you see the way the Somali people are handling themselves, it's like they have their intact culture, and that is the reason I tend to think why they are really cohesive and integrating and so much moving forward than the rest of the others. So, and then getting back so that you also answer the question, we see if we as immigrants, we really keep our culture intact, like Meshach, Abednego, and Shadrach. When they went to a foreign land, they had their own culture. But what they were doing there, the culture could have shocked them. But the way they were put is that they were so intact such that there was nothing to shock them. And I remember, I see they said, even if it means that we can never worship or we can never do that, what are we really doing to help our kids in such a way because to help them? Is it that we have come here and we have really not being with our kids? Then finally, I wish also to be explained for my personal understanding. We have mental, the way you are saying. There is this mental that you can be born with, and my mind is retarded. There is also the other where I get the drugs and peer, I get intoxicated, I become addicted. And also there is this shock that you have now said. I want you to explain how these all mental issues comes into a human being. That would have been very important. Then from there, we really see. And is it we parents that we are really making our minds, our kids, to have mental issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You know, we are supposed to do a presentation before taking questions, but the format that we are using here today is different because it's interactive. It's not that we are presenting and you are listening. If we had presented, I would have talked about something that usually causes culture shock. is called family functioning. Family functioning, the definition is that it is the social and structural properties of the global family environment. It includes interactions and relationships within the family, particularly levels of conflict and cohesion, adaptability, organization, and quality of communication. When we talk about culture shock, nobody is always prepared for it. You see, in the Somali community, most of the work we have done in the community is in the Somali community, and we have succeeded. And just like you said, sir, the Somali people, they don't have two religions, they have one. But in the African community, we are so different in our religion. It brings comparison. People, they will say, in our church, they wear earring. In my church, they don't wear earring. Are we not serving the same God? We are. But just because there is diversity in the way the religions we are practicing, brings a lot of questions to these kids in the family. That is number one. If we were back in Nigeria or Kenya, you will only see the way the Nigerians do their, religion or practice. If it is in Kenya, you see the way they practice. But here in the US is a place of diversity. So you need to be prepared as parents to educate your children on what the differences are. You are bringing this, your culture, which is the religion that we have, Seventh-day Adventist. Some people go to Anglican church, some people go to Methodist. They need to know, this is what we do. This is our religion. This is what we do. That is number two. Number three, there is something called family adaptation. So many people are not ready to adapt. I'm not talking about adapting your religion. No. Adaptation is in the way you educate a child around all these topics we are talking about. Dr. Oni used to call these kids from the immigrant or refugee community, he calls them ABC, American born confused. He will talk more about that. Their confusion is even more than what we think. Because they see something that is different in their schools. And then they come to the church community, they see something that is different. How do they measure what they need to take in or what they need to give? So we need to really look at that. So when we talk about culture shock, I will tell you three things, sir. There are three ways you can really help those people that are coming or that are already here that are still in shock. Because if you are in shock for 1 year, I think the second year, you need to have gotten over the shock and start living. It's because some people don't really get over it and they don't seek help to get over it. That is why the shock normally, lingers or continues. And before you know what is happening, when you are in shock, it's going to affect everything that has to do with your 8 dimensions of wellness. When you are in shock, it's so difficult for you to retain a job. When you are in shock and you remain there, it's so difficult for you to really think cognitively, to really be able to decide on what is right or what is wrong. And the other 8 dimensions of wellness. So talking about culture shock, I think we need to do to ourselves the good we need to do to ourselves, which is first, understand the system, understand the differences, understand the similarities, then look for an area of commonality, things you can give up, things you don't want to give up, and how you want to manage that. I think that would be very helpful to you, Dr. Oni.
Yeah, I think you really exhausted that. I think I will go to the balance. How do we balance all those things that we just mentioned? It is important that we balance them in different ways. When you are shocked about something that, this is unfamiliar thing to you, how do you make do? Turn the lemon to lemonade. How do you make something familiar to you? Create some familiarity from something that is unfamiliar. And that is what we call adaptation. So we need to adapt to some of those cultural shocks. If we don't do that, we will never succeed in this country or anywhere you go. I was in Kenya Tanzania, and Zanzibar in October. And there are a lot of things, as from Nigeria, there are a lot of things that was really shocked to me there too. Some type of food, I tried them, even though it's not familiar to me because what we eat and the way we prepare is different. So that's why I'm saying that everybody experiences shock, but how we express it is the different. So balancing those things is very important. And especially with our children, like you just mentioned, I usually kid around and say, those kids are ABC. They were born, American born, confused. Now they are confused in the sense that you tell them one thing at home, the school is telling them something. How do they balance? When you say you have a problem, how about those children? Parents, we talk about parents, but we need to talk about those kids too because they are going through a lot and they cannot express it like you are an adult. Things will happen and you can go to your neighbor, your friend that are parents like you, but those kids cannot go to another kid because they will learn something different from those kids. So they are the ones that need to really balance those things. And as Afrocentric parenting, you need to see how you can change some of your parenting style that will adapt to those kids. Otherwise, those kids will see you as nagging. You nag them, you tell them to do things every time. They feel like next time around, you just go over their head. You can be saying something, they won't even listen, they turn you off. I remember when my kid was growing up, I would call her. She said, Dad, I can't hear you. And he put ear like this. How can you hear me when you put something in your ear? And in Africa, I feel like sludging her, but I cannot do it. How can you say, Dad, I cannot hear you, and you close your ears like that? So that shocked to me. I didn't do that to my parent, neither my parent. So this is really shocking. And so when we come here to parenting, and we wonder why some kids are in child protection, because we are using the way we train people back home and we parenting. We have to find a way to balance the way we parent. Are you authoritarian parent or you are authoritative parent? When you are able to meet your kid in the middle, you don't have to be, you can be a friend. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, you cannot be a friend to your daughter or your son. You know what? There's a way to do that. There's a way to balance those things. Kids don't have to be fear of you when you walk in, especially even myself. Before I know a lot, I used to say, when I walk in and my kids are afraid, I think I was doing a good job. But no, it was a poor parenting for your kid to be afraid that when you walk in, you are a drill sergeant and they glue to their mom. You know, that is why sometimes those kids really glue to their mom, because we fathers from Africa, we would like to parent with iron hand, and it doesn't pay. Those kids do not learn anything. They are just fearful, and nobody learn anything under fear. I know a couple of days ago, somebody was talking about ADHD, adult and child deficit. And I'm saying to them, when in Africa, people will beat them up and say, oh, you behave. Well, when you no longer can beat them up, that thing still manifests in them. That behavior, that illness. So that is why we need to balance. We need to balance those things with the work we do. I know we have to put bread on our table, but a lot of time we spend too many hours and we are unable to balance the family stability, and especially those children that need nurturing. And when you are authoritarian parenting, you don't care about those things. But when you are authoritative, you nurture them. You have a balance. You use one hand to do this and use another hand to push them forward. So that is the one that we're talking about balancing. And that is why in America here, when people have kids that reported you for something in school, then you miss your kids. And we are saying the system is bad. Well, we create the system too. So there are ways we need to do all those things. And how does that affect kids' mental well-being? That's what they call ACE, which is adolescent child adverse effect. Now, those experiences that they have makes a difference in their longer years. When they have experiences that really punitive, they become bully when they go to school because that is what they experience. They go back again and do those things. So we need to look at how all these things happen and how it affects our mental well-being. The same thing with adults. When you are depressed, you put that depression and anger on your kids. A lot of time, the kids frustrate us. And so when we beat them or when we do other punitive things, it's because our own frustration is what we're putting on them. So we have to find a way to balance those things. And I think it's very important that we know that kids live in different worlds. They live in two worlds. World of Africa and world where they are now. And where they are now is the one that is important to them. You cannot teach what they have passed. So even if you brought them here, it is still important that this is their own world now. And how do you balance that? And I know people may say it's easier to say than done. But when we're in a situation, that's part of the cultural shock that we need to balance. We need to balance the way what they do here and how can we still do it. People will say, I like my comfort zone. And I tell them, it's good, maintain your comfort zone, but add more to it so that you are more versatile. You are more diverse. So, I know for sure there are more things to talk about from those questions that you may have. I will pass it to Nelly.
Well, I think we've exhaustively talked about this element of culture shock, but I would want to draw it to us as a community, as a faith community. And I think, David, you alluded very well with the example that we have in the Bible about the 3 Hebrew men. Even the Bible reminds us of how we need to raise our children. It actually says in Proverbs, train up a child in the way of the Lord. When they grow up, they will not depart from it. So as parents that have brought these children, it's our duty to raise them in the ways of the Lord. If we call ourselves a faith community. And we need to give our children some identity. We need to give them a foundation. If we don't do that from the home, they will try to find it out there. And once they get out there, what they are going to be facing. So that's why it's very important, even as, first of all, as parents, we need to know ourselves. We need to know who we are. What do we believe in? As Tolu said earlier, there are things you want. What can I compromise? And what can I not? And the beauty about this country is that we need to respect everyone's culture, right? When we talk about diversity, that's why you hear in the US, they call it a melting pot. Everyone is bringing who they are together and we create this beautiful thing. But it doesn't mean you change your way of values, your beliefs. So we need to remember who we are, even from Africa. We didn't come here to trade our family values. We are a collective system. We come here, you find it's very individualistic. That doesn't mean we deviate from who we are and then we leave our children out there trying to find meaning. So that's when we see our children really getting frustrated because they have nothing to identify as, because we failed to give them that foundation. And that's what usually leads to mental health issues, because they try to connect with peers and then they get to a place where they feel that they are not relating, because at the end of the day, we are who we are. So let's do our job, our due diligence as parents, who we are as a culture, as a community, and continue to instill that in our children. They may not follow that right now. As Dr. Oni said, you get here, you find your child is talking back at you, and you'll be like, wow, now you have the nerve to stand in front of me and tell me what I need to do. But at the end, still do your part and still love that child. They will remember. There are many times even my own child comes back and tells me, I remember what you told me. So we should never give up. Even when we see them rebelling, not responding to how we want, as long as we are consistent and we are persistent, they will still continue to remember even as they leave our homes.
One other thing sometimes with those children that we're talking about is the fact that sometimes they just can't help certain behavior. And it's because of that we say those kids are very inconsistent, and what is consistent about them is their inconsistency. Today they're okay, tomorrow you say hallelujah, and then they blow out on your face. So it's that type of inconsistency, and because of the environment. And a lot of times we need to know the way they communicate. The communication is very important. Sometimes we talk to our kids in the way that they can understand. Sometimes they may use proverbs. They don't understand those proverbs. I remember back home when my mom looked at me, I know without even opening her mouth. If to do that here, Dr. Ola was telling me that she did it to one of her child, and he said, Mom, what's wrong with your eyes? Well, he's trying to make sure that it behaves. So those kids will do things that will be very shocking to you sometimes. I was telling somebody that I did not know that I was black until I came to this country. And I did not come here as a teenager either. But why? Because where I come from, everybody was black. Everybody's black in my country. And so when I came here and people were talking about blackness and color, it's shocking to me too. Because where I come from, everybody's black. So I never thought of my color. And later on, when I did study on that, it says people of color spend 75% of their time thinking about their color. I was shocked. So this is really something that those kids, when they go to school, people bully them because of their language, because of the way they communicate. They talk about accent. And then sometime back home, people wrestle and play on the playground. We do there, here, they said they are bullied. And many times some of you may be called that your son is bullying back in school, but they're just wrestling. That's what kid does. So it is important that we know how to balance those things so that we are able to be successful with our parents and your parenting style. Thank you.
Thank you.
So culture shock is a very big topic, and it's a very concern to all people. From Amwang, what our plans are, and we are trying to do this because we know we have lost young people through suicide, friends, our kids. So this is what we are doing, because sometimes it's good we understand. We are getting an office in Nairobi before people come here through the social office in Nairobi, because there are plans there. In getting this office, it means that we are going to be able to get somebody to train people before they come here and know that there's culture shock. Culture shock is simply that when they come here, their men have to cook, which we know very well they don't cook at home. It's very simple. Men have to change diapers, which they don't do back home. So when they come here, they are told you have to cook, you have to stay at home, you have to change the diapers. It really frustrates so many people. So we are trying that they must get training before they come here. They must know that when you go there, you are not going to fight. That is how life is. And here also, we are soon getting an office, and some people are trained to also to be handling such problems, to be training them, whereby they can take their problems, and this is what is happening. That's how we live in America, because you have to do this and that. In this way, we'll make sure that at least people are standardized, they know what they are doing, and then we try and see, is it going down, this culture shock to all of us? That's what we are doing from AMWAG. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that input. Thank you, everybody, for that wonderful input. Like what you've seen they have done, they have really summarized about culture shock. They have summarized about issues causing mental illness, because they have talked about relationship, they have talked about culture shock. Then we have more questions. C had one question. Please, can you ask your question?
Thank you. My question is, as we are talking about this mental illness, most of the time you find other people, they are suffered with the confusion, the same time with the anxiety. I just wanted to know how these people, they get treated.
So she's asking about mental illness. She says she has had people have suffered from depression, some people have suffered from anxiety. So she wants to know, how do we treat people with anxiety and depression? Because I think all we're discussing about, maybe those issues will cause mental illness, like culture shock, those relationship issues. So she's wondering, then if somebody has anxiety, maybe the family has caused anxiety, the family has caused depression, how do we deal with that, Dr. Oni?
Well, I think there are different ways to do that. A lot of time when we know the signs and symptoms, depending on how you feel, it is important for you to, without knowing what is happening, when you feel certain ways, it's important you talk to your practitioner or doctor so that you can get referred. But a lot of time what we do is somebody refer you for assessment. We call it DSM-5, which is a library or a dictionary of different diagnoses. And it's from there that we determine what type of illness or mental illness you have, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whatever you have depends on the frequency, the intensity, and how you are dealing with it, that people will be able to help you with that. And sometimes it's important for you to really make sure you disclose, because sometimes you come to people and they say, oh, I'm not sick, but I'm not well. Well, nobody knows what to do with that. So it is important you are able to really tell us how you feel. Maybe I just feel fatigued, I'm tired every morning, I cannot get up to do different things at a certain time. And people will ask you questions, how long that has been going on, and how frequent does that happen to you. So these are type of signs and symptoms before somebody can come up with some treatment methodology for you. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but...
Thank you, Dr. Oni. I think you said in case somebody has those mental health issues, you need to see a doctor. There were two issues. We wanted to know about the increase in suicide among the young people, and also there was a question about drug use. Please, can you respond to those two questions? There's somebody who said about the increase of suicide among the young people, and also there was a drug issue. So can somebody respond to those two questions?
Okay, and I think when we talk about suicide and drug abuse, those are two different, very broad, actually, topics. Because first of all, when we see suicides happening, we want to really look at what are some of the root causes. Someone doesn't just wake up and just decide to end their lives. And so they're usually underlying causes. And that mostly could stem from untreated mental illness. And just to speak to what the question about treating mental illness like anxiety, depression, we know that when we intervene early, mental illness is treatable. But when we don't seek help early and then the symptoms persist, understanding first that mental illness is a condition of the brain disorder. So there are times that someone may not be able really to manage the symptoms on their own. And as Dr. Oni had said earlier, there are different types of treatment. And when you're receiving the treatment, you need to follow up with that treatment. If you're put on medication, for example, you need to follow up on those medications. Because especially a condition like depression, we know that there are certain depression medications that can cause suicidal ideations. So it's always good to not diagnose yourself, to not regulate the medications on your own. Work with your doctor, follow up, and always watch your symptoms. Once you're on those medications, how are you coping with them? Because sometimes they could start bringing out other side effects. And that's where we see some of them, it could be having suicidal ideations. To talk about suicide, there are times, even as a culture, we're talking about where we are not able to really face someone that is going through a hardship and ask them, are you thinking of killing yourself? We've got to get to a place where we should be able to ask that question directly, looking at someone in the eye as you're asking that. Because I know growing up, it was not something that we would ask, because you think that, oh, I'm putting those ideas in the person's head. Actually, on the contrary, we need to ask. Because at that place, then you should be able to see what is going on with this person, and if they are really thinking about killing themselves, they may avoid the question, and it will help you to gauge where you need to start in terms of assisting this person. So we need, there's a lot of, when we talk about suicidology, that we can talk about in terms of what is causing our young people to end their lives. We've talked about parent-child relationship. There is sometimes a lot of disconnect that we don't understand what our children are going through until we realize someone has ended their life. That's when we start looking back. Oh, we wish we knew. So let's start being more intentional, creating spaces to connect with our children, to try to understand what they are going through so that we are able to intervene. That is one way we can be able to address some of these issues where we get to react instead of being proactive. And as a family, let us also see how we can support our children. I know there is stigma around mental illness, but it's about time we started being the allies of supporting people that are actually suffering from mental illness, being the support, being able to show them where they should be able to get help, even go with them. So there's a way we can be supportive as a community instead of actually being the ones to talk about people that are struggling with mental health related issues.
Thank you very much for that information. Yes.
I'd just like to add on to what she has said. Personally, so I'm a Kisi, and I know my culture has a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health and mental illness. So what do I mean by this? She talked about stigma, and she talked about stigma, and she talked about coping. One of the stigma that is very strong in the Kisi culture that I relate with is the fact that there's negative beliefs in talking about the status of your mental health. Therefore, your attitude, our attitudes and behaviors are therefore negative, which leads to self-isolation, where you don't want to talk about it because you feel like the spotlight is going to be on me. This leads to now people getting into drugs or self-isolation, where that is their way of coping. They seek alternative methods of coping what is going through inside their minds and hearts. I will give you an example. We have kids. We'll talk about teenagers. Our culture is a little strict, and I understand. I'm strict to my own kids. I'm a mother. And you see, the kids now, they don't want to come out and say, I have bad grades, or I'm with bad company. Or there's a cultural barrier. They don't want to talk to their parents about what is happening at school. So what they result in coping mechanisms that they just want to hide. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to talk about it. That is why, as parents, we should also have open hearts and open attitudes where our kids can be able to talk to us, even as aunties and uncles, where they know that there's somebody in the community that somebody can talk to. That is the reason why AMWAG is so committed right now to dealing with mental health. AMWAG has resources for mental health for people to talk to, and that is the biggest issue right now. One of the best coping strategies of depression is finding somebody to talk to let yourself know that you're not alone in this, okay? And we are, as I said, there's resources out there in this community for people to seek help so that everybody can know that they're not alone. Hiding and bottling everything inside their hearts, one day just mushrooms up, and you can look at somebody and say, oh, after they kill themselves, you're like, I didn't know they were going through something. But we are here to talk about talking to a loved one, talking to resources that are available to us, that knowing that the feeling that you have, you're not alone in it, can change a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll just say this in a nutshell. I think, to summarize all the things we have talked about, we need to normalize talking about mental health. People don't want to come to that point of recognition that it exists. Sometimes we dodge it because we think something that Dr. Oni will normally say, community gossip syndrome. And when anything happens, we all come together to console the family. Why should we not be proactive? So talking about resources, yes, AMWAG has a lot of resources. We have other organizations that are even working with the state, working with counties, and resources that can make you come for this kind of training. You are even, compensated with gas card just because we are passionate about what we do. Suicide happened in our community last week. From the Nigerian community, a vibrant young man dropped his car, walked, and got to the Mississippi bridge and jumped inside. This happened last week. They are yet to recover the body. why should we come together as we are doing today? Is it to fulfill the purpose of the funding or to really fulfill the purpose of helping the community? When it gets to this point, I tell people, I will not go into any community where suicide happens again. Because what is the essence of coming together to talk about mental health and someone is sitting in the congregation and suffering from all what we are talking about? We cannot be coming into a community, offer ourselves as resources. We have a lot of it. We have a contract with the state, MDH, for the next 4 years to talk about mental health and suicide prevention. If we have all these resources and people are not forthcoming to access the resources, then why should we not be home by this time and be sleeping? And I'm taking this up this way because I need to charge the congregation right now. Don't let's make it a ritual. We come, we eat, we go. Let's make use of all this information we are listening to. It's high time. Not even one suicide happened, 2. Another one happened in the Liberian community this last month. It's 1 too many. It's different when it happens in the white community. They don't have a country of origin. For me, I brought 4 kids to the US. Why should someone ask me what happened to the 3rd one or the 4th one or the 1st one? We need to be more intentional when it comes to doing all this program that we are doing. I'm talking to us as organizers and us as presenters. If we do not have a way to do a follow-up and sustain all these programs, it's better we don't come to the community at all. Please, I'm saying all this because we've gone to a community before, and a week after something happened. I was so scared to go back to that community because going into the community in the first place was to prevent that kind of, incident. And it happened. We don't want it to happen anymore. If anyone is going through anything, I am a mother, is a father, mother. Every one of us, we have a role to play. It's not only about being a presenter in a place. No, it goes beyond that. We should always have a follow-up. Let anyone going through anything talk about it. We are here right now. We need to profile immediate solutions and have action steps. I'm so sorry if I become so passionate about what I'm talking about, but I just have to say this. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add to what Dr. Tolu just talked about. We need to speak up. We really need to start speaking up. I know we like to keep things at home to see if they can just disappear. They are not going to disappear. So I'm really, really urging us. Our children are suffering. I remember when we had a suicide in our community, our young people actually came together. And I remember they said, why were we brought into this country? We are so alone. We are so disconnected. We'd rather go back. I'm not sure if maybe some of you, your children came and talked to you. But I'm telling you, we are having our children here that are lost, that really are trying to find meaning to this life here. And until, first of all, us as parents that are here as adults, we become more vigilant in the support we want to give our children. We can continue to act like it's not existing. It is there. And it is happening. So let us start being more proactive. Let us, if you see your child acting differently, you talked about drugs, by the way, we haven't touched on drugs yet, but it's about time we start looking at our kids. In fact, there is a whole training that you can see about drugs. You'll see a bottle of water like this, you see it's water, but actually there's drugs here. So we need to educate ourselves. I talk about mental health literacy. We need to educate ourselves. What does that look like? We bring a training here and ask you guys to come and training. Let us come to those trainings so that we can be informed on how we can support our loved ones.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful input. Thank you for letting us know that if anybody in the congregation, like we're taking responsibility of this information today, if you know somebody who is hurting, you know somebody who looks sad and depressed, it's okay to talk to that somebody. Tell them you are there for them. You love them. You just want to know what's happening so that you can help them in one way or another. Thank you for those input.
I just want to add one quick thing I forgot to say. You know, we also have, actually the state is really trying to make access easier. I don't know if you're familiar, we do have, normally when there's an emergency, we call 911. The state is now creating a number that is just 988, where it's a crisis line. Instead of dialing 911, instead you dial 988, especially Hennepin County. They have resources where they can come up, and they really make it culturally relevant, meaning you can even say, I'm a person of color, I'm an immigrant, I need you guys to get me someone that speaks Swahili, or get me someone from this. They try to really match whoever coming to work with you with your level of comfort. So just know that there are resources. Please let's not sit in silence.
Thank you so much. I think Lillian has a question for you.
Thank you for the presentation. So I've heard that from the conversations that you've presented, that early intervention is important. And for some of us, we might not know what we are looking for so that we can intervene. Can you tell us some of the symptoms we should be looking for?
Thank you very much. Like if somebody is having, how can we know that it's that time that we need to seek help?
Thank you very much. So just before we answer your question, you cannot fill from an empty cup. As a mother, as a father, as a pastor in the church, as an elder, we need to be knowledgeable and be informed so that we can take informed decision when the time comes. Why am I saying this? There was a time we were going around faith-based communities to do something called community mental health literacy, how to identify signs and symptoms. Just because we have not succeeded in normalizing mental health, that is why we see a strange behavior and we overlook it. For me, as a mother, I learned in this country, when I see people doing things too, I usually attribute it to the spiritual. It goes beyond that. Yes, sometimes it's spiritual. But we need to apply physical and also spiritual. I have a deaf daughter. It took me years to really understand that when we got to the US. Because when she got to the US, she had access to communication. She was able to do the sign language very well. And, the system overtook me in IKEA. I had to take my time to learn so that I help her to know what she needs to know. There was a time I traveled to Nigeria. We usually mention this in our conference presentations. I traveled to Nigeria. When I was going, I told Dr. Oni, please, help me look after them. They are all grown up, but, still, if you are under 18 in the US, you are still a child. Even if you are over, they still want you to be cared for. So I left, and it was getting close to her birthday, and she got to school thinking I would not come back for her birthday, and she started acting out. Nobody understood the reason. I was in Nigeria, Dr. Oni was at work, but she was in school. So the first thing they thought of was to call 911, and they took her to the crisis unit. She got there, she was acting normal. They placed her under surveillance. Dr. Oni got to the hospital. She just looked at Dr. Oni and did as if, she didn't know Dr. Oni. And they called me, and I said, don't worry. I'm going to change my flight and come back. I'll go get my flight tonight. And when I got to France, I texted her, I said, I'm on my way. And that was it. I came back, she celebrated her birthday, and nobody ever placed her on drugs. They were trying to give diagnosis to her. I said no. And just because of her, I went back to school. I went to study marriage and family therapy because I wanted to understand what was behind this. Not every one of us will have that luxury of time to go back to school, but we can be knowledgeable by attending these trainings, asking our question, to identify signs and symptoms. Very, very easy. A child that is very jovial, that will welcome you when you come back from work, and then she starts isolating. Not a day or two. It's going over a period of 4 weeks, 2 months. She'll lock herself up. And you think it's not a problem? It is. So we need to be vigilant. Please don't let us trivialize the behaviors of our kids. When we are praying, oh Lord, help me change our heart. Oh Lord, do this. We need to be proactive, just like we said earlier. Go ahead and ask questions. This is a very, very turbulent time for them. Sometimes I pity them. You know why? There is a lot of confusion out there. Our Bible, I was telling Nelly and Dr. Oni, our Sunday school in my church this morning changed to an interactive session like this. When we came to we were talking about sanctification. And a girl asked a question about gender orientation and things like that. And it became a whole topic. We started around 9:30. We didn't finish until 12:30. That means those kids, they have a lot of questions, but they don't have the, space to ask. Let us create the space. Some people, I look at them as parents sometimes. I just think sometimes we are unfair to ourselves and to these kids by not listening to them, by thinking they should know what we know. They are confused. Just like Nelly said, they will talk, why do you bring us to this country? We brought them so that they can have a better life, experience this context. But when it becomes a crime by bringing them, and we are blamed for bringing them and not being able to help in every way possible, it becomes a problem, a family issue, a country issue. When anyone is coming to Kenya, they will say, you want them to take your children from Kenya. You want them to take your child to America and then they won't have any more culture. We should be more proactive and be willing and intentional to do more. Thank you.
We talk about resources. We have some resources around here too. There's a training that we have that has to do with suicide prevention training. People need to register for that. I remember because of our relationship working with AMWAC, every time we have training, I usually send it to Bessie. So, and I know you may not be able to go or attend those trainings. Some of them are online, some of them are in person. But if people are looking for resources, we usually send it to your website, to your email. And so please, take advantage of those things. Even if it's one day that you go there, you will learn something. And it's very, very important for us to know that. When it comes to stigma and all those things, guys, I want you to know something. Takeaway is that you cannot legislate what anybody will use their mouth to say. So it is important you don't care about that thing, because what you think is hidden is going to become public information that you cannot control at that time. When a child committed suicide, it becomes public information. It's no longer gossip syndrome anymore. So you cannot legislate what people will use their mouth to say. Do take care of your own family, please. Forget about people's stigma. You are the one stigmatizing yourself. Thank you.
That is the most wonderful question that we can ever ask, because it's never ending. We have family members of different ages in the house, right? We have our parents, we have our grandparents, we have our children, and the best thing so we often ask ourselves, how does depression look like? How does mental health look like? Oftentimes we think that depression is just, a state of sadness, when in reality depression looks different in different people. I can have my grandmother who maybe she's from home, and she starts feeling bouts of sadness because she's no longer in her farm. She doesn't do her daily activities like she used to. She doesn't wake up, go to the farm, do her things. And now I've put her here. I said, okay, Grandma, watch my kids for me as I go to work. Then that starts taking, I'm not saying that that's everybody, I'm giving an example. That's just taking a toll, because they start missing the things that once brought them joy. So when you say, what are the symptoms? One of the symptoms that we can look at for our children, our mothers and our grandmothers and the people around us, even our friends, are the changes in moods. Somebody who used to be very happy all of a sudden is just moody and irritated. You can't tell them nothing, everything just makes them mad, and that's not their personality. Another one, just lifestyle. They change their habits, especially teenagers. When they start all this, as she said, isolating themselves, they're hiding something, your radars go up as a parent. and you're like, why isn't this child that doesn't want to come out for dinner anymore? You know, those are symptoms to look at. Things are happening in school, they're depressing to them, they don't want to talk to anybody. The other thing is the lack of interest in things that once brought them joy. If you look at somebody, they used to love doing a certain thing, but all of a sudden, whatever brought them joy, so let's say you have a child who was interested in sports, somebody who used to love singing, used to go out or painting or something, but all of a sudden their talents don't matter to them. Those are signs and symptoms that we need to look at. You know, Mama used to love farming. You know, she used to like her little garden out there, you know, and she just goes there every spring and summer. She's out there tending to her vegetables in the garden, but now she doesn't want to. Or just, it can be simple things, just listening to her favorite music. Those changes are the ones that the lack of interest and enjoyment of things that once brought them joy, that things we need to look at, the interest. But one of the things that we mostly need to look at most is for how are we behaving towards them when they start showing these changes. Are we offering help? Or are we just saying, hey, this one nowadays, they've changed, but we don't know what to do. When you see the changes, she said it, he said it, let's be proactive. When you see a change in somebody, it's time to act. Step in. What can you do to help? That is one of the things that our community is failing to do, is that in our houses, in our churches, you see changes, but we don't do anything about it. Well, let's be very vigilant. Let's be very open. And above all, I know we're meeting in a church, so and I'm a Christian, so I'll just say it. Let's be very prayerful. When you see these changes, let's seek the Lord and know how can we stand in the gap of prayer, how can we help this person that is in need, and then we'll uplift our community at the same time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Anybody? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Amwag, for what you're doing. Yesterday, I was in a setup like this, and the panel was kind of more younger people, a whole 3 hours, and I really benefited. And here you are today. I was surprised that you just brought a Q&A like it was a follow-up. I expected presentations, but at the end of the day, I'm learning something. I've been in the U.S. a little while. If you want to know, the day Elizabeth came to the U.S., we are the first people who welcomed her, actually. So is who? Who else? Yes. I've been here long, and of course, Beatrice. Yeah. Yeah. My point is this: some of us have been here long enough. The panel, I'd like you to listen to me. If you're not listening to me, then I'm talking to myself. Now my worry is this, that we've been here for long, some of us even over 30 years, but the problem is we have not assimilated. Having many Africans here, having many Kenyans here is an advantage, but it's another disadvantage. If I went to a little city where everybody is not African or Kenyan, I would have assimilated easier. For years, I go to a church which is Kenyan, not even African, for years. And I get when I have a problem, I have a bunch of Kenyans who support me and all that. Therefore, we don't integrate in this system. I want to propose to you that I think that we are not understood. Yesterday I was walking, 2 days ago I was walking in the streets we were having an evening walk with some 3 young men, and Kenyans, and they were talking and we were laughing. This Caucasian lady saw us like a quarter mile away and had to go the other side of the road. And when she had passed, she came back to this line again. You know what that means? And we are not assimilated, and I don't feel assimilated. And the second part of that question is, you, as I heard you talk, are connected to the government. Does the local school, like the other day, the school near where you live is called what? The high school? No, the high school. Champlain 1 year, a few years ago, graduated over 120 Kenyans alone. A sign that we are here and we are many. Does the Champlain High School know us and have organizations like you connected to them so that they can understand who we are? Does the principal know AMWAG? If it does, as AMWAG connected even to the staff? And that's just an example, and many other things. I'm asking, how do you, as AMWAG, help us assimilate? And as we assimilate, in a positive way, as we assimilate, then they will understand us and we'll understand them. You get what I mean? Yeah, I'd like to get a response in that.
Thank you. Anybody who can respond to that?
That's a very loaded question and very good, actually. For the most part, what you're alluding to really is about we need to be able to voice who we are, because when we moved into this country, we intend to live in this country, then we need to assimilate, meaning we are now part of this country. And I will say, yes, I do work for the state. There are many times when we call, even when you see councils being formed, we rarely see our people being involved. We need to start sitting at certain tables so that our voices can be heard. You talked about school, Champlain School. In fact, we need to start getting involved even with civic engagement. Schools now, you can sit on the school board. I think, especially if you have school-age children, you want to be part of their system. You want to be able to educate yourself to understand the system so that you can support your children. But many times we shy off. We don't want to, we feel like we are exposing our ignorance. But let me tell you, actually it's not. Instead, we are educating ourselves, because these white people that we talk about, the Caucasian, they don't understand us because they are also afraid of us. In my role, I have done some cultural responsiveness trainings, and I'll tell you, every time we've trained a group of it would be all white folks in the room talking about cultural responsiveness, you will hear silence that even a pin dropping you can tell. Because they are so lost at that time, they're like, I have no idea what this is. But as we continue, you see black people talking and sharing their experiences and who they are, you start seeing people opening up and being more embracing. So we need to be sitting at those spaces. You talked about going for a walk, someone goes on the other side. I've seen that, by the way. And you know what I do? I'll say, hey, just make it comfortable for that person that I'm just a human being like you. You don't need to be scared of me. So people are usually afraid of the unknown. But let's start being in those spaces, educate folks who we are, to understand we are not as different as people think. And that's when, even when we go, remember when you talk about mental issues, you choose who you see. How many of you here have white doctors? Don't we? Do we all see black doctors? No. So how do we connect with the doctor? It's because we interact with them, we let them know. So let us be intentional. Even when you're saying a mental health professional that is not of your race or color, most of that session, in fact, they are just sitting there wanting to connect with you, to get to know you, to know who you are. So if you don't represent yourself well, you will be misdiagnosed. So I think it's about time, first of all, we start speaking up. Let us be knowledgeable in terms of who we are, so that we can educate our brothers and sisters from the other mothers to know who we are, instead of being afraid of us, to know that we can sit also in those take those seats, we can contribute, and we are part of this system now. And I love Minnesota, by the way, because it's a state, one of the states that is it's so culturally diverse and very open to embrace everyone from every background. So if we are missing in those spaces, we are doing disservice to ourselves. So if you get any invites, an email comes, there's a council going on, you're called to go sit and contribute to, please go there. There's a training happening, go get trained. So we do have a lot of resources. And in fact, there's a lot of money being put in to acclimate most of our folks that are coming from outside the country. So people that we can acculturate ourselves also to this culture, at the same time educate those who are here about our culture. So it's not just a one-way, it's a bi-directional. We are educating and we're also being educated. So let's be more aggressive and intentional in terms of being part of this system, educating ourselves, and also taking leadership and ownership.
Thank you very much. We are almost coming to the end of our session. But before we do that, do we have any question from the congregation? Anybody who has an input? Yes?
question.
Is that there's so many people have been murdered, especially in Kenya. And, some of them are from here. Once they go back home, they are murdered. That was one question. And the other question was about financial literacy. People are being, exploited here and there. Is there resources?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I had wanted to mention it, but just one session of presentation is not enough to address all the factors that can contribute to positive mental health. What we do as an organization is that we tell people how to build generational wealth. We know paycheck to paycheck cannot really make you self-sufficient. We all have skills that we can use to build wealth. For example, I know how to make beads.
That what you do, what you do now, 9 to 5 job is not transferable. You cannot transfer that to any of your parents or children and so forth. So it is important you do this entrepreneurship yourself. And that is the way that is what you just mentioned, that we can train people, we can mentor people to the level where they register and start doing something. But still remember now, you don't own company, the company owns you. So when you start that company, don't say, I'm going to retire right there, because you have to run around. I've been in business since 1998 and I'm still there now. So it is important that you know that you don't own business, the business owns you. Sometimes people say, I'm going to be comfortable. Well, whatever you do for someone for 9 to 5 job, if you do that for yourself, I think you benefit.
Thank you everybody for that good information. I think we have exhausted from the question from the congregation because we are winding up. You have a question? Huh? Oh, that must be the last one because of time.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know what good language can I I could use, but let me try. I just came late, but I found it really, we are being taught about how we should take care of ourselves, our children, our family, and the community itself. Actually, I think as this could be a lesson which we, like people of God, we could teach our children, our community, our families. Otherwise, the church could help the government. I know you are from the government and you want to support the community, so to stay in a good welfare way. As I heard one of you speaking, we should be friends of our children mostly. Children, we should be friends with our children, so that they cannot hide whatever they are thinking. We have good books, we as Christians. I think all of us were Christians, in these days everyone is a Christian, one has a religion. But we, this knowledge which the government has given themselves to teach us, this is the church could teach this to the world. The church could be teachers of the world. Because we have to support the government. Because if we make friends with our children, they will tell us every secret. That's why, because now they hide what is in their minds. So we have good books, except we don't have time. Since we came to these countries, it's good, yes, to chase money in order to get a living. But we have been extraordinary of using the time God gave us to take care of ourselves, take care of our children, and take care of our families and the community. Surely we have good books, like we have, which we would read and teach our children and help support the government instead. So there will be no problems in the government, which now the government has chipped in to come and teach us. What I can say, we have a good program in the church. Back home we used to have groups. Sometimes we have groups during church time and during when we have camp meetings. I know even every church, even now, every church has a program. We have programs for young ladies, old ladies, men, children, and even boys and girls. And this was the way to teach our children so they can have morals. So, friends, like now, with grown-up, we have a program which is called New Start, which can help us even not to have this problem of mental. New Start, which means nutrition, to have good food, exercise, water, to drink water. God gave us everything which will make us live. Yes, I want to finish like this. We know all this. So, since we have been overtaken with being busy, this is why we are losing our children. The same thing, we are now going to lose even the families. So please, we have good books which you can educate our children. There are books mostly in our church. The church book called Child Guidance, Train Up a Child, and other books like counsels to teachers, parents, students, teachers and parents. We could have this message which we should give to the world. So thank you. I can thank for the government has chipped in. Instead, we could teach the world, so the world could be in a good position. I ask you to bear with me. I could use the good language, but truly, we live in a time which we are losing everything, and we are going to cry. But it is not God's will. It is we have chosen to be the way we are. Now the government is coming to advise us. But the church should have this word to the world. May God bless us.
Can we clap for Mama? Yes. She really wanted to bring us a point that we need to read books about children, books about the relationship, books about marriage, books about adults. And then she said, if we read that book, then we won't be losing our children. Thank you, Mama, for that information. Thank you so much. So then I think we have come to the end of the questions. I think I'm going to hand off the mic to Mr. Gichana. Thank you so much for everything. Thanks so much for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. What do you say? Can we clap twice to the visitors? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, members, for coming in. And we will ask Sister Susan next time when we need like this time again. We have more time, maybe one of the Saturdays in the afternoons. They come here and then they teach us more. For now, we are finishing. What we will do, I will ask our pastor is here, Pastor Peter Kingwena is here, to come in front and pray for us. And then when we finish from here, make sure wherever you are sitting, if there's anything there you carry out, we'll go outside there and line up according to the number with the names. And then you get whatever you get there, and then we go, we see you next time again. We meet here again on Friday evening and Saturday morning. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome. Anytime we have a message, just come in and see what we have. Thank you so much, members. Now we will stand up. Pastor Kingwena will close the ceremony. Can we all stand up?
I'm surprised how many people came. Thank you very much. We didn't anticipate a big crowd of people like this. I'm surprised. Thank you for coming, and hope that this is not the last time. Next time when you have a chance, come too. Let's pray. We thank you, God, for your goodness and your mercies to us. Thank you for bringing us here to share knowledge and skills how to help each other. Bless these meetings, bless these ladies who have gone out to organize themselves and provide expert knowledge to community so that we can live health-free and nicely. Go with each one of us and bless us. We are prayed in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Asanteni sana, mimi kizungu sijui. Ngoja mzee unipe dakika moja. Nashukuru sana kwa Amwagi. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the presenters, doctors, and everyone, Amwagi, and everybody who made it here. Now, the procedure is this before they take over. We are going to follow the procedure. The names are going to be called outside. When your name is called, you go straight. But TME Church, I would like all the TME Church first to line up there. TME Church, you go line up, then every